Hey there, welcome. Thanks for being here today. More on relationships and spiritually and practically. So thanks for joining me. Thanks for subscribing and liking if you feel so called. And we left off yesterday with a video that was talking about the qualities of masculine and feminine. And I want to talk a little bit today. We're going to circle back to some of that. But I wanted to talk a little bit today about, again, the mapping that the twin flame templates introduce to us and allow us to get closer to. So what we're sensing, I'm sure, through this process is it is a multidimensional process. Our relational intimacy and divine union is a multi-dimensional and multi-expression of levels of up close personal, of integration, of coming into continuous levels of oneness. Where we begin always is within. And this is one of the ways in which the new paradigms for relationship, romantic relationship, is really supporting us in learning experientially, because oftentimes it doesn't necessarily just make sense to the mind, right? So we get some cognitive information, which is the masculine, right? We want to know, we want to have an understanding, we want it to make some sort of logical sense, linear sense. And then we also need to blend that with the direct experience of soul and really the deeper ways in which we are already imprinted with these templates. We simply need to say yes to them and activate them. And this is what is happening all over the planet today. And sometimes that activation actually takes us down a spiral of having to really face where we are divided before we can move into the light of the healing. So one of the things that Dr. Oscar Bertrand has talked about is that our next evolutionary step is a merging of our spirituality, the transformation of our biology, as well as culture. And, you know, our culture is what holds all of these paradigms and programs and our conditioning in many ways. And that as we go through these developmental stages that we're all experiencing, we get the opportunity to look within and to heal. So at the end of, towards the end of the video yesterday, when I was talking about the qualities of the masculine and feminine and how, you know, there's a wide spectrum of both. And at the end, I was more so just alluding to part of the healing is the division from our own polarity. And when I say our own polarity, I'm meaning we're all made up of the polarities of the masculine and feminine, right? So some of us come into this world and we are more feminine. We're in a female gender, or we are a masculine gender, right? We're male or we're female. We're biologically thus. And then there are these layers of our evolution that begin to morph, right? We can look at any species and recognize that, they go through stages and phases of their development, from being in the water to being on land. So, I don't personally see that the evolutionary process and the divine plan are two separate things. I see that they are easily married. But we also are changing and evolving through our sacred technology, which is our body, which is how our brain operates. I have to close my window. Which is how our nervous system operates. Excuse me. And the union also has an impact on all of this, or rather this evolution has an impact on our union. So when I was talking yesterday, I was mentioning that one of the things that we have to reconcile when we're wanting to come into healthy relationships, period, okay, whether you be in the karmic, conscious, or sacred union phases. Some of the basic things that need to be reconciled is our relationship to our own gender. So I was giving examples. If you're a woman and you've had negative experiences with the mother, with your maternal line, or with other women, and you reject the feminine qualities, you reject whether they're balanced or imbalanced, right? When you're rejecting that without resolving, you are rejecting a part of yourself. Same with the masculine. If you are rejecting a part of you, of your power, of your strength, of your clarity, of your abilities to be a provider and protector, so to speak. That's all. That seems to be the catchphrase these days to sum it up. Then, because maybe you are rejecting a father figure, you're rejecting your paternal line, you're rejecting your experience with other masculines, you're still rejecting a part of yourself. Now, part of this work, right, and this is not just the twin work, although, again, it happens organically within the work of twin flames, that template. You still have to be active in it, you still have to be activated, you still have to be doing the work, but it's a little bit more of an innate process. Whereas when we're simply working consciously with our own healing journey, and you don't carry that template, and you're wanting to have more meaningful, deep, intimate, healthy, and whole relationships, we have to come into that wholeness within us first. So if I am rejecting certain parts of my femininity that are actually coded to be a part of my personality or a part of my divine blueprint. Now I'm bringing in different templates here that we work with through the ascension process, right? That are already sort of divinely written, okay, on a soul level. We, karma can be seen as like that initial imprint, that initial mapping system that we have, and then it kind of expands from there. So if I have issues with that, then I'm not going to be able to come into my wholeness. And that means I'm not really going to be able to operate in a healthy and vital way with partnerships or in any other relationship. Same for a masculine. If a masculine is unable to own and stand in his right aligned sense of empowerment, then that's going to alter any romantic relationship that he's going to be in. And most likely, if there is a masculine who leans a little bit more heavier to the feminine side, they're most likely going to attract a more masculine feminine. Now, degrees and ways that that expresses are all going to be very different. And again, this isn't right or wrong, but what we're doing is we're recognizing that there is a mirroring that goes on within our relationships that's always shining back at us. It's always shining back to both our strengths, hopefully, and our weaknesses, our vulnerabilities. And when I say vulnerabilities, I don't mean vulnerability in, that opening and way that we soften and become really intimate with no needing to be in protection mode, so to speak. But in the vulnerability of our weaknesses that keep us from being in our wholeness. So one of the things that across time, all of the ancient mystery schools, at the center, at the core of their teachings, has always been alchemy. And, and it's often called like the great work, right? So that great work is the inner alchemy. It is the alchemical process of harmonizing the polarities and the elemental expressions of life that are embodied by our humanity. So the masculine holds more of an electrical force and the feminine holds more of the magnetic force. And as we've talked about, the feminine holds more of the water and the earth. And these are all, some of these vary through different cultures, but the overarching generalization is sort of this. And then the masculine is the fire and the air. And when these polarities come together in a beautiful coherence, right? Balancing and harmonization, where they blend and they flow together in a way that creates a new, it's often called the divine child, right? So within these teachings, when the alchemical union reaches, we'll say, a crescendo, right? When it reaches its peak, there is a new expression that is birthed, that is referred to as the divine child. That divine child holds a consciousness that is greatly expanded and an understanding that is deeply, deeply held in love, by love, for love, of love. as love. There is an innocence to what happens when we become more healed and whole. When we are in receptivity of ourselves through deep levels of self-love and coming home to ourselves, when we are deeply in resonance and harmony with our person, and when the trust and the knowing of thyself and the knowing of our person, there's a frequency and a vibration that changes our biology and physiology. And this is what starts to birth, so to speak, the new earth consciousness. Now, why is it so important that it's, clearly focused so much on relationship and the human being, right? One reason is on this planet, this is a 3D physical plane planet that is slowly but surely raising its frequency, and it too is going to be less condensed and constricted and more vibrationally potent as love is I don't even want to say grown, as we evolve as beings that are able to love deeply. And because we're working with the polarities, right, we come together. Now, there's other prisms of this inner union as well. There's other prisms, other ways that we can look at the shifting of what gender is, what gender looks like, or non-gender. And there's a lot that can be said about that in a way that is informing us of perhaps an evolutionary step. And yet there are ways too that it has been very co-opted in ways that aren't serving. Okay? And that's a whole other topic that you can be, that can be explored if you feel called. But within what we're talking about, we are building a new foundation of these divine qualities of the masculine and the feminine in right alignment and right order. And these qualities are the expressions of consciousness that are going to create a very different world. So that's kind of this evolutionary step. And when we look at, well, how does this change us, physiologically or biologically? On a very basic level, one of the things that we can begin to look at is that, the recognition that we understand now that our emotions are chemical, right? And our emotions, when they are in density, when they are in suffering, when they are in pain, they are part of the creation of disease. They are part of the creation of a chemistry that can keep us addicted to pain and suffering, and it affects our entire health and vitality. It affects our organs. It affects our nervous system, right? So this is what we're talking about. But when we're vibrating from more joy and peace and love, everything about our body changes. Just in the way that it does with the density, it opens, it expands, it operates more optimally. It becomes more light, literally photonic light infused. And the chemistry, when we're living from joy and love and peace and celebration, is very different than the chemistry of pain and suffering. So this is all kind of part and parcel of why we're doing the deeper healing work, right? Why we're trying really hard to get out of these paradigms that hold humanity down in the suffering. And back to the masculine and feminine, we are the two that come together to create the consciousness and the vibration on our planet. So what we have right now, and I think it's definitely in its changing mode, but there's a big there's still quite the chasm, and part of the healing of the chasm is the levels of reactivity and the ways in which each gender views the other and speaks about the other, and the deep levels of fear that the masculine has of the feminine and the feminine has of the masculine, and the predatory victim natures that have eroded over time to create much more profane expressions of us each, right? It's not just one or the other. And going back to what I was talking about in the beginning, when we're in those divisions, we're dividing from ourselves. So those divisions, if I am fearful of the masculine, if I am, man bashing, so to speak, or vice versa, right? Then I need to look at that within myself. Where has it come from? Where is the fear from? Where has it been proven? Where have I attracted parts of that to myself based on my vibration and my consciousness and my belief? Right? So this gets into the whole, the whole realm of we are always creating our reality. We're either doing it subconsciously or we're doing it consciously. We begin within, right? We take all that energy that is in division, that is in loathing, that is in rejection, and we begin to turn it inward to learn to love that within ourself. And these are the beginning stages of this work. And sometimes this process is beyond what we have in this here and now lifetime, right? We can bring many things from past lifetimes that are also supporting this division, that are being called to the surface to heal. And beyond coming into higher level love relationships, and I talk about it as romantic relationships, but it's not the same kind of romance necessarily that that we've known in the past. The romance of what's coming in is different. It is there's a higher call of that romance, and we've seen like examples of it back like during the time of the Renaissance, and the chivalry and the poetry and the music, and the very strong masculine and feminine polarities expressing, but the levels of being able to give and receive affection and love and beauty, these are divine qualities. Beauty is a divine quality. Love is a divine quality as well as a human quality. So romance, when I talk about it, it's a little different than just a base level rom-com movie. So I hope that this is landing. I hope that, that we're starting to see that this is very much, this trajectory is very much in motion beautifully. And we can check in with ourselves through those different phases and stages that I talk about in a couple of the other earlier videos of where are you, right? And where are you in your own process? Where are you in your own relationships, and what is your true desire? Sometimes I really feel like we don't have all these love songs and romantic movies because we don't want it. We want it. We want what comes with that. We want that deep heart opening. We want that deep safety and connection. And each polarity has its ways of giving and receiving to the other that right aligned intimacy. And this is where we're growing into. All right, I'm going to stop right here. I'm just barely under 30 minutes. All right, thank you so much. If you are curious about working with me, check out the link below. I work with individuals and couples. Be well.